Welcome back. Okay, let's do the next part of this lesson. So I'm on page 15. This video immediately follows what we were doing here when we found the equation of the line for a bunch of these graphs. Okay, so now we're going to do the opposite. We're going to draw a graph when I've given you the equation. Okay, so there are kind of two ways to do this process, and I would recommend the second way, but you're always welcome to do whichever one you prefer. Okay, so the first way is to create a table of values and then graph the table. So some of you might prefer that. That's great. It totally works. And then the other way is to begin with the y-intercept and then use the slope to find some points. Okay, now I personally would recommend method 2 because it's quicker, but it is totally up to you. Like I always say, whichever method you want to use, it's great. They're both correct. I don't mind. Okay, so for the first example, I'm going to do both methods, but from there, after that, I will probably just do the second method. Okay, so let's take a look here. All right, sorry, just scrolled too far. Perfect, let's do this. All right, so in this example, we can see that our slope is -3 and our y-intercept is +3. Okay, so we're going to use those mostly in the second method, but we do need to keep them in mind when we do the first method. Okay, so that's a nice color. Hey, let's do this. All right, so we want to figure out the points that might be on the graph, and we are going to do that using some basic algebra. Okay, so yeah, there we go. Perfect. All right, so if we were going to do a table of values, what you need to do is just pick kind of like a few values, okay? So I always pick just like -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. Or sometimes I'll even just pick -1, 0, and 1. But kind of better to have too many than not enough. All right, so what happens here then is you're going to take that y equals mx plus b statement that we know, and we're going to plug in the x value. Okay, so we just picked an x value, and we're going to plug it in where we see x in the equation. So we know that y equals mx plus b, so in this case, y equals -3x plus 3, so in this case, y will equal -3 times our x value of -2 plus 3, okay? And so then, should have made this line a little longer, apparently. There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay, so there's our y value. So -3 times -2 following bed mass, right, is 6, plus 3 is 9. Okay, so that means our point then there we go. Our point xy will be -2, 9. Okay. Then for -1, same thing. Okay, so we're going to use our y equals -3x plus 3. Plug in that x value that we just picked, -1. And we're going to follow bid mass to find what it equals. Okay, so -3 times 1 is +3, plus 3 is 6. So that gives us a point of -1, 6. That looks like 0.6. I'm just going to rewrite that. There we go. Then for 0, same thing. Okay, so -3 times the x value, which is 0, plus 3. So -3 times 0 is just 0, plus 3 is 3. Then for 1, -3 times 1 plus 3. -3 times 1 is -3, plus 3 is 0. So we're going to get a point 1, 0. Then for 2, last but not least, plug it in and solve. Okay, so -3 times 2 is -6, plus 3 is -3. So we're going to get the point 2, -3. And then we're going to graph them. Now you're going to notice that this one actually won't fit on the graph. That's fine. Okay, you just graph as many as actually fit on the graph, and that's good. Okay, so let's put those points on there. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here. I can get this pretty accurate. Okay, so yeah, -2, 9, not going to fit. That's fine. Let's go to -1, 6. So -1, 6. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That puts me right about there. I'm going to try and draw that a little bit more neatly, as always. There we go. That's better. Then 0, 3 puts me right here. Then 1, 0 puts me right here. And 2, -3 is here. Okay, so those are the 4 points that we calculated that do fit on our graph. That's great. And we're going to put a line through them. Okay. There we go. Getting a little bit better with the stylus. And then, as always, we're going to put our arrows on both ends to show that the line keeps going in either direction. Okay, now, let's talk about the other method. Okay, so the other method is very straightforward. Okay, all we're going to do is we're going to start on our y-intercept. You know what, I'm actually just going to do the second example. I don't want to write on top of this graph. So before I do that, I'm just going to go over this. So yeah, our y-intercept is +3, right? And so that means that we know the graph needs to cross the y-axis at 3. And voila, there it is, right? So our y-intercept lines up with the equation, and you can see that we found that point here, and that makes a lot of sense, okay? And then our slope is -3, so that means between points we're going to be rising -3 and running 1. Now, if you're not sure how I got that number, that's okay. Pardon me, I'm going to show you here. Remember that -3 is our m, right? And that any value, any whole number can be written as a fraction by over 1. Oh my goodness, you guys, this is crazy time with this stylus. Let's try this better. There we go. Okay, good enough. So if we looked between any 2 points, we can see that we are rising -3 and we're running 1. Right, so if I picked any 2 points, I can rise -3 and run 1. Okay, so that does line up with our equation. So you can always check to make sure your work makes sense by looking at those. Okay, second graph, second method. This one is much less work, so some of you will appreciate it, okay? Some of you may not like it, but that's okay too. It's totally up to you. Use method 1 or method 2. I don't care at all. All right, so in this case, we are going to see the y-intercept and start there, okay? So we have a y-intercept of +5, okay? So I'm going to put my point there for my y-intercept. And the reason I can do that is because I know for sure that the graph has to cross the y-axis there. Okay, so I know that's a point. And then from there, I can use the slope to rise and run to find my other points. Okay, so my slope this time is 7/4. Okay, and it's okay that the slope is weird. It's okay that it's a weird fraction. That's totally not a big deal at all. So if I were to rise 7 and run 4, you can see that that won't fit on the graph, right? Those numbers are not here, and that's okay. Okay, so I don't panic about that. If that ever happens, which is why I included this example, then remember that if the slope is -7, sorry, it's not -7, my bad, just 7/4, then that's the same thing as saying -7/4, right? Because if I had -7/4, then those negatives would cancel, and that would leave me with +7/4, which is my answer. So this slope, while unorthodox, right, we would never leave our slope as that final answer because it's not simplified, it is still equivalent, right? So this number and this number are the same, even though they look a little bit different, okay? And so because of that, we can use that rise and run, that equivalent rise and run, to find points, okay? So rise -7, 4, 5, 6, 7, and run -4. So remember, running when it's negative means to the left. If it was positive, it means to the right. Okay, so there we go. I've run -4. So that is the second point. And then I can do the same thing if I had enough space. Okay, in this case, I don't actually have enough space. It would be off the graph down here, and then going that way. But if you had space to make another point, you should, and then we can put a line through it. Okay, but we really only do need 2 points to make a line. So if you only have 2 points, that is totally okay. Okay, so there we go. That's my line. And then again, if you wanted to make sure that this was correct, you can take a look again at that y-intercept, and we're going to see that that is correct, right? +5 is where the graph crosses the y-axis. And then if we wanted to count our rise and run from my left point to my right point, you can see that if I count all the way up, that is up 7, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. And then running 4 to give me that slope of 7/4. Okay. So there we go. That's good. We've done our work correctly. All right. Let's do this one. So in this case, we have y is equal to x minus 2. Okay, so now some of you might look at that x and think, there's no slope. Fair, I understand your concern, but remember that anything with no number in front of it is the same thing as 1, right? So 1x or 1y or whatever. And so in this case, we have 1x minus 2. So there, now we have our slope and we have our y-intercept. Okay, so again, let's start at our y-intercept. So here it says minus 2. So I'm going to put a point down at y is equal to negative 2. And then we're going to use that slope of 1 to find our points. And again, remember that 1 is the same thing as 1 over 1. So our rise is going to be 1 and our run is going to be 1. Okay, so I'm going to rise 1, run 1. Rise 1, run 1. Okay, so you can see that I'm going up 1 and then running 1. Up 1, running 1. Up 1, running 1. Okay, so there we go. So I can just put a few points on the graph. Maybe 4 or 5 is kind of what I would usually do, okay? And then I can put my line through those points. I'm going to try that again. Oh boy. Okay. There we go. Okay, so, yeah, good enough. We're just going to call that good, okay? And then I'm going to put my arrows on both ends. Maybe in an ideal world, I probably should have made this line a little bit longer, so I'm going to just do that here now with you. And remember to always use a ruler when you're making your lines, okay? You always want them to be nice and straight. That's a great place to save some marks, right? So if I see a line that looks like this, that's not really a line, right? That's kind of like a hillside or something, not really what we're looking for, so you always want it to be nice and straight. So we're going to use a ruler to do that like I am, okay? All right, last but not least, y is equal to 5 over 2x. So again, don't panic, okay? I know this looks like mildly unorthodox. Y is equal to 5 over 2x. There's no y-intercept, you might be thinking. But remember that we can always add 0, and that means the same thing as without it, right? So y equals 5 over 2x is the same thing as y equals 5 over 2x plus 0. So there we already have our slope and our y-intercept, okay? So we're going to use those and do some graphing. So if our y-intercept is at 0, that means that we're putting the point 0, 0 on the graph, okay? And then 5 over 2 is our slope, so that's our rise over run. So we're going to rise 5 and run 2 to get us here. Oops, there we go, okay? And again, to put another point on the graph, remember that if our slope is 5 over 2, that's the same thing as saying negative 5 over negative 2, right? Because again, those negatives would cancel when we would simplify to final terms, lowest terms. And so we can use that equivalent slope to find a point. Even though it doesn't look like it's in lowest terms right now, it still means the same thing, right? So we can rise negative 5, so go down negative 5. That's so messy. I'm going to try that again. So rise negative 5 and run negative 2, so 2 to the left, and then I can put a point there, okay? And then we're going to draw a line through those points. Oh boy, that's not good. Try that again. There we go. Okay, put a line through those points. Remember to extend it a little bit in each direction. There we go, and then put some arrowheads on it. And again, we can examine our work. We can see that we had a slope of 5 over 2. So if I wanted to make sure that I did this right, I can count, right? So I'm going to pick any point, and I can see that my rise should be 5, which it is, and my run should be 2, which it also is. Okay, so that looks good. And then we can remind ourselves that our y-intercept should be at 0, right? So that means the graph should be crossing the y-axis at 0, and we can see that is the case. So we've done this correctly. All right, good job, you guys. I will put some worksheets up on this material for you, and you can take a practice at that. And if you have questions, message me, of course. Also, again, just to restate this, if you do prefer this method, you're most welcome to do it, okay? A lot of people don't prefer it because of when you get fractions like here, and they think that's a little bit more stressful, which is fair. So if you want to do that, great. If you don't want to do that, the second method is great as well. All right, I'll talk to you ladies soon. Bye.